Greetings YouTube, Alan Lube here, back with another little recap video on the Pro Tour Lille. The Pro Tour Lille has just finished up. I am a little sleep deprived because I stayed up watching those top 8 matches of the Pro Tour, which were some of the best matches I've ever seen. But it was worth it because I woke up to also hear that Prism has now officially reached Living Legend status. And in the next scheduled ban and restricted announcement, which should be tomorrow, this video should be coming out on Sunday. Prism will be out of the meta, and Briar also really close. So, with that little intro in mind, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into the full recap of the Pro Tour. So the Pro Tour top 8 was interesting. There was 4 Briars, which wasn't too surprising. I think most people already knew that Briar was kind of the top deck going into the Pro Tour, but I think some people still doubted. I think people thought the Calling Singapore might have been like variance that there were 4 Briars in the top 8, but the Pro Tour really showed that Briar is basically the best deck right now. And each Briar won their quarterfinal match. And before we go any further, if you did not watch Matthew Folks versus Ian Zhang, that is probably one of the best matches of the entire Pro Tour. So yeah, you should go check that out for sure. It's a very long game, but it was very intense and good plays all around. So in the semifinal, we have basically 2 little Briars versus 2 regular Briars. I believe Bartosz is on the usual 4 attack Briar with like Exude and what is it? Entwine Lightning and things like that. And then Jacob was on a Belittle Briar. Shamir was also on like a more regular Briar, the 4 attack Briar, whereas Matt Folks was on his Belittle Briar creation with cards like Promise of Plenty, and it's almost like a combo Briar rather than a aggro Briar, and it tries to abuse Spellbound Creepers. I think the deck is insane, and Matt Folks piloted it very well. I think watching those matches, you could tell he had a lot of nerves, but he still made the right plays in the end, and he took the dub with his creation. So credit where credit is due. I thought the deck was very innovative. It was very innovative and very powerful, and he ended up taking it down, becoming the Pro Tour champion. And so another thing I wanted to know is that Pablo Pintor has shown himself to probably be currently the best player in the world. He won the first Pro Tour, which put him on the map. He then won the Blitz team calling in Madrid, and then he comes to the second Pro Tour in top 8s. I think Pablo is probably the best player in Flesh and Blood right now, if I had to put my name on someone. But also these Polish players are like also crazy. So yeah, not gonna go into like the day 2 conversion numbers or anything too much. I kind of went into that last video. But let's move on a little bit to the Living Legend leaderboard. So Prism has won the calling in Lille. So she is now officially going to be Living Legend status after the next ban and restricted update, which will be within 24 hours, basically. She will end up at 1,098 points. So that means for the national season, Prism will not be there, and the meta is going to be, well, it's going to be very interesting. Oldham's definitely going to come out to play, but I think people are going to expect that for sure and will adapt. I think that Oldham decks can be built in a way where they absolutely dunk on Briar. So Briar, while she may not be the best deck in the format, she still will be the best proactive aggro deck. And I'm not sure if the combo variation that Matt Folks plays will also be top tier, but it'll be interesting to see. And so Briar, after winning the Pro Tour, I believe will gain 200 points. Yep, Pro Tour 200 points. So that means she will be at 842. So 1,000 divided by 842. Oh, sorry, not divided. Minus. She needs basically 160 points to become Living Legend. And each national championship is 40 points. And the US national champs is 80 points. So if she wins 4 nationals or or the US nationals and 2 other nationals, she will also be Living Legend by the time the Worlds format comes around. So that'll be interesting to see if Briar makes it. Rosetta Thorn being gone also nerfs Viserai, so that'll be interesting to see if we have like a completely new meta by Worlds. I think if Briar does LL in time for Worlds, the meta will I I have no idea what the meta will look like, to be honest, but yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe Fi will show up to play. I really like playing Fi, but I don't think he's going to be the best meta solution in these upcoming tournaments. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at some of the numbers for the calling. So this was the calling representation for day one. Nothing too surprising here. Briar and Viserai being the most represented. Prism right after Prism. You know, for a long time, people have talked about how Prism has a bad matchup into the aggro decks, Briar and Viserai. And while that is true, you also need to be a skilled pilot on Briar and Viserai to consistently take down Prism. And a very skilled Prism pilot will punish players who make small mistakes in their game. So I think Prism is like one of the best heroes for converting to day 2 usually, and the best of the best can convert all the way to top 8 even through slightly unfavored matchups with the Rune Blades. Dash being right after is not surprising. Probably a lot of calling players were like, oh, I want to try the Wombat Dash, or I want to try, to bring out, Pistol Dash or things like that. Fi also not surprising, but also Fi has not performed well. Basically every feature match he was on for the Pro Tour, Fi lost. And while I have my own opinions on whether or not their decks were good based on what were shown, it's like even I can tell that Fi right now is not in a great spot. Bravo right after. I think as a Bravo main, it's hard for me to say this, but I think Bravo is probably just like one of the worst picks going into the Pro Tour / calling. Briar is not a favored matchup for Bravo if the Briar is a skilled pilot, and Prism being highly represented is like death. Viserai is not even like a winning matchup some of the time. It could be like 50-50. Dash is like if their pistol's already losing, and sure you beat Fi and like other heroes, but that's about it. So I thought Bravo was probably like a pretty bad pick going into this tournament. These tournaments. Dromai, nothing much to say there. She hasn't shown up too much. She has some like tops of like battle hardened and things like that, but nothing too crazy. Oldhim, also not surprising. I expected more Oldhim than Bravo just because I feel like Oldhim can be built in a way to at least dunk on the Rune Blades, but will lose to things like Prism Dash Dromai. So it's a trade-off there. You can gem your way to the top 8 basically. And yeah, everything else, nothing too surprising. You got Dory, Lexi, Icelander, and a little more of everyone else. So going on to day 2, the day 2 conversion also isn't too surprising. You see the Rune Blades, you got your Briars and your Viserais, and you got Prism, punishing players who don't play extremely tight. So nothing too surprising there. Bravo also did well, or decently, I should say, for day 2 conversion. Fi did horribly, and then Dash did okay also. And yeah, so let's go. Let me look up the top 8 Pro Tour. Let me see if I can find the bracket real quick. Should be right here. This is, yep. So this was the top 8 for the calling. And we have 3 Prisms, 2 Briars, a Viserai, a Dash, and a Dorinthia. Now the Dorinthia was crazy to see, but Dorinthia is super unfavored into Prism, so no surprises there that the Prism won. I believe Briar won this matchup. Briar also won this matchup against Viserai. I don't recall who won this matchup between Prism and Dash, but I do know the finals was Prism versus Briar. I believe Yoris versus Watchtech. Sorry if I butchered that. But Prism squeaked it out just barely in the end, and now Prism is living legend. So Dory being up here is actually really surprising, but it is what it is. I think Dory plays more on inexperience than anything, but having 3 Prisms in top 8 meant that Dory probably had no shot, to be honest. Unless all of the Prisms, they got a little lucky here and then both Prisms lost, they might have a good shot, but yeah. So congratulations to Yoris for winning and being the man that that bans Prism, basically. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about is what's the meta going to look like after Prism Living Legends. And you know what? I already made a video about this. And honestly, I think my tier list is like mostly the same. Briar's going to come out to play. Oldham's going to come out to play. Viserai is still doing Viserai things. And then like you got Bravo, Fi, and Dory, but then it's like honestly, it's like Bravo is such a weird position. because now that Prism is gone, right, the Guardians are obviously in a much better spot. But Bravo is his strength is that he can beat Fi pretty easily going aggressively. And while he may not have as good of a matchup into the Rune Blades as, say, maybe Oldhim does, he will have a better matchup into the decks that try and counter Oldhim. For example, Icelander, Dash, Dromai. I think for the most part, Bravo, as we've seen in past decks and past tournaments results, that Bravo has generally a better time into like anti-Guardian decks. But Oldhim may adapt, and who knows? Oldhim may become, best deck in the format post Living Legend. But yeah, I don't think my tier list changes too much, honestly. Like, yeah, this is what I expect. And yeah, I think that's basically everything I wanted to cover. Briar and Matt Folks becoming the Pro Tour champions, Prism finally becoming Living Legend. And yeah, with all this in mind, I will probably start preparing for the national season. The ban restriction announcement will come out tomorrow. I'll probably also make a video on that. But I do not expect them to do anything about the meta. Just because I feel like with Prism gone, that's already such a large meta shakeup, I would be very surprised if they touched anything for Briar. And yeah, actually, I take that back. There is one more thing I want to talk about. And that is, let's just put a random backdrop while I wait. Sure, right here. I wanted to talk about the ban on stubby hammers. Now, when the ban on stubby hammers happened, I think it was a good ban. I thought that having such a powerful combo deck with Fi as something that can show up to armories and just blow out players is not a good play experience for a lot of people. But I am not confident that the ban of stubby hammers led to a healthier meta, quote unquote. Because even though Fi was the best deck in the format, playing his combo and just like pushing other decks out of the format, the problem is that Fi is more like fragile and susceptible to Bravo than Briar is. So once Fi was like nerfed with the stubbies ban, Briar then became the best deck in the format. And the thing about Briar is that with embodiments of Earth and like a solid fridge, Briar is much more resilient to Bravo than Fi ever was. And because of that, we see a format where both the Calling and the Pro Tour had 4 Briars. And I'm not necessarily sure that the ban of stubby hammers was the correct ban. I think a lot of people, when it happened, were talking about how it was like, oh, so obvious, for sure it needed to be banned. Oh, the meta is so much healthier now. And I just wanted to challenge that a little bit, because seeing 4 Briars both in Singapore and at the Pro Tour, and both of them doing very well, albeit not closing it out in Singapore, is I think very telling. And while I do think the stubby still should be banned, just at a local play experience like reasoning, I thought it would be interesting to sort of challenge the preconception that everyone had at the time that the ban on stubby hammers would lead to a healthier meta. Because that was what everyone thought. It was like, oh, Fi is too powerful. Banning stubby hammers would definitely lead to a better meta, right? Even though at that time we already saw Guardian players adjusting to sort of like push out the Fis. Like Bravo was basically like 70-80% against Fi. But there's no way Bravo reaches that numbers versus Briar. So that's just something I wanted to add towards the end. And yeah, that's everything I wanted to say. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. And I'll probably be back tomorrow to talk about the ban and restricted. Unless there's nothing on there, then I won't talk about it. But yeah, I'll be posting my usual gameplay going forward. And maybe some deck techs here and there for what I'm working on. But yeah, see you around.